by Par Lumber. Welcome into Talkin Beavers, week 1 officially almost here. I'm Adrian McCord. Welcome in to another season, and it is game week, so we have so much to talk about. I'm joined alongside Mike Parker, of course, the voice of Oregon State Beavers, and Jason Jean-Baptiste, who played defensive end there from 2001, 2003. You guys, we had to dive in last week into everything that is conference realignment, how important that is, but now the final year of the Pac-12, as we have known it for many years, is upon us. We had a few teams play last week, but Oregon State going to play this week, kicking off their season against San Jose State. Mike, I'm going to start with you. When you think about this 2023 Oregon State season, what are you most looking forward to?
AJ, I'm most looking forward to a game on the field that the Beavers are playing in against another opponent, and for a few hours we can put aside everything else, because everything else has been the predominant sort of discussion and conversation everywhere I've turned, everywhere I go. And I'm looking forward to seeing in this opener and throughout the year what I believe we're going to see. I want to see it unfold Sunday at San Jose State, and that is a laser-focused team, program, a group of players and coaches that, they know all of the talk, all of the rumors, all of the scenarios, and a lot of the hand-wringing and anxiety and angst that we've all been afflicted with. They're aware of it. But what I've been impressed with, AJ, Jason, is in going to a lot of practices and scrimmages, when they're there in that sort of bubble and in that world, they're there to work. We talked a little bit about this last week, but they are and have been incredibly focused, because I think they believe with us that there's a special season ahead. Now we'll find out on Sunday. I'm just most looking forward, guys, to how that translates into a real game Sunday. I expect it to translate well, and it'll just be nice to talk Beaver football on the field in the year of our Lord 2023 without all the other stuff to talk about for a few hours.
Jason, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I mean, I think these players understand what's at stake here. I'm looking forward to the continuation of growth and of greatness. I mean, what we've seen year in and year out under the helm of Jonathan Smith is that each and every season they've gotten a little bit better. Each and every year, a little bit better, a little bit better, and a little bit better. And I think for the first time in a very long time, since the Fiesta Bowl years, I'd say, this team is coming into a season where there's a lot of expectation, there's a lot of opportunity, and I'd say that they're one of the best teams within the pack. So come Sunday, I think they're going to come out, hot, and they're going to be looking to make a statement. And I'm looking forward to it.
You're not alone in that, Jason. I have seen a whole lot of people from around college football saying, the sleeper team to watch in the Pac-12 is Oregon State. They're ranked top 20 in the country across pretty much every preseason poll you can be. They're coming off their first 10-win season since 2006. So the hype around this team certainly feels like it is higher than we have seen in more than a decade. So part of the reason for that is the new face on offense. We're talking about the Clemson transfer, DJ Ungalele, who is now officially going to be the starter for Oregon State when they take on the Spartans this weekend. Here's what head coach Jonathan Smith said he did to earn that role.
His body of work throughout, he just continued to get better and better. I do think there was a separation. We had 2 big scrimmages, and he played the best in those 2. I do think we've got other guys in that room that can compete and help us win games. But I think the separator in our minds was really those 2 scrimmages.
So, Mike, we heard Jonathan talk about the scrimmages are where DJ continued to separate himself from some of the players who have been in this locker room, like a Ben Gulbranson, competing for that starting spot. As someone who was at the scrimmages, what did you see from DJ that makes you confident as Jonathan, that he's ready for this job?
It was close, I will say that, because Ben Gulbranson knows the offense so well, and he's experienced in it, made a lot of plays and a lot of good throws in every scrimmage and practice that I saw. Aiden Childs is kind of a man-Childs, pardon me, but he's got an incredibly bright future and made some sensational plays along the way. But I think DJ, just through kind of a steady progression, I think if you would have asked him at the end of week one, who's your starter? His answer was, well, I'm not quite sure. But week to week, practice to practice, scrimmage to scrimmage, he did, not by a lot per se, but steadily separated himself as being somebody who can make every throw, push the ball downfield, tuck and run when necessary, have a command of the right run checks to get into, etc. He just showed a growing command throughout the camp to earn the job. I'm excited to see what he's going to do because Jonathan's never had a quarterback with the physical tools and gifts that DJ possesses.
So it's time now for our legendary moment presented by Abby's, a legendary pizza tradition, and it's going to come, Jason, off of my question to you. What do you think is going to make DJ legendary this season for Oregon State?
Well, I think it's his experience level. Coming from a conference such as the ACC, where it's highly competitive, playing against some of the best teams in the country, to him now coming to the Pac, where we all know it's an offensive conference. I think he's gonna thrive. He has a line who's experienced and will be able to protect him. He has a lot of skilled position players that will be able to catch the ball in space and make more opportunities for him. Not to mention that he's a big-bodied quarterback. I mean, here's someone who's 250 semi-pounds, 6'4". So I think, like I said last week, he could drive the ball. So he has all the skill set, in order for him to be super competitive and do really well. But that experience level is something that you can't coach. It's just something that he has. And I love that.
One of the things that I think is going to make him legendary this season, he's coming in obviously as the transfer from Clemson, one of the highest touted transfers that Oregon State has ever seen. He's got a 22-6 record with the Tigers. But the stat that stood out to me is that he is leaving Clemson as the quarterback with the 7th most rushing touchdowns. And when you look at this Oregon State roster, especially the quarterbacks, one of the names that you are missing from last year is Jack Coletto. And Jack Coletto was such a wildcat. Mike, I loved that you asked Jonathan about how do you replace somebody like Jack Coletto? And the reality is you do not, because Jonathan Smith said he's like a 3-in-1 deal. And so for me, of course, is DJ going to be the same type of wildcat, wild card player that Jack Coletto is? No, absolutely not. But the fact that they have somebody in that quarterback position who can punch the ball in when they're in the red zone and they can disguise some things, to me, that's something that stands out. When you look at DJ's game, it's kind of an underrated, like flying under the radar aspect that could become really, really important for Oregon State this season.
AJ, that's a great point. Just as Jason's about the experience factor and being in front of the incredibly loud, large ACC crowds, but that running dimension. When Jack Coletto was in, there was no mystery, and it didn't matter. It was like a Frank Viola changeup. He could tell you, here comes the changeup, and you weren't going to be able to hit it. Well, Jack Coletto, here I am. I'm going to run over you, and you're not going to be able to tackle me. Now, they blocked it well, and they did a lot of things, but there was no mystery. Your point is so well taken, AJ, in that with DJ, I think he can be a guy that can just hammer you a la Coletto, but he also, if he doesn't like the look, can roll out, he can fade back to pass. There are more options with DJ. Well, while he's not Coletto, and there's no Coletto package per se, I love the combination that he'll provide in those short yardage situations, keeping defenses on their toes.
Exactly, Mike. I think you summed it up just like all of the points we're saying. But either way, Oregon State and Beavers fans should be really excited about DJ going to be under center in week 1 against San Jose State. Coming up next, we are talking about defense, because where the transfer on the offensive side is very exciting, defensive side, not so much. Who's going to step up when we come back? Talkin Beavers is presented by Par Lumber. Welcome back to Talkin Beavers. We talked about the offense, their defense, something that really shone in 2022. They led the conference in total defense, and Oregon State, though, now with some holes to fill, because it's not just Omar Spates, one of their leading tacklers, who transferred to LSU. They've also lost 2 cornerbacks to the NFL, and so now it's a question of who steps up to fill those roles. Jason, when you look at this defensive depth chart, who jumps out to you as somebody who can make that impact defensively that Oregon State began to hang their hat on last year?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to start with one of the names of one of the captains of the team, Katan Oladapo. I think he is someone who is going to set the tone of the defense from the very beginning. He comes back as a starter in the secondary where, like you said, they are now without two of their starting corners from last year. Another name that they don't have in that secondary from last year is Jaden Grant. So, Katan's going to play a big role in this year's defense. The linebacker level, Easton Mascarenas is someone who I'm looking at as someone who's stepping up to fulfill the role and the position of Omar Spates. And also on the front three, you have Andrew Chatfield. So I think when you have a formidable unit like you did last year with the defensive unit, you have to be able to build upon that. And I think that Trent Bray has the players in the positions in which they need in order so they can continue building off of it. Now, how he does that, we'll soon find out.
Mike, what about for you? What have you seen in this preseason from Oregon State's defense that gives you the confidence that they're not going to skip a beat?
Mainly because of the presence of Trent Bray, the D coordinator, and the outstanding coaching that the back end guys are receiving from both a safeties coach and a cornerbacks coach. Trent Bray coordinating it all. The defensive line coach does a great job. And Jason, touched on it just a bit. And that is the depth in the front seven will take a little pressure off of the inside guys. When I'm talking about the front seven, I'm talking about the D tackles, the outside linebackers, defensive ends. As Jonathan told us in his presser, those are almost interchangeable terms. And the Beavers have a lot of them. They've got a lot of edge rushers. They have James Rawls as a tackle in the middle of that defense who had a huge year last year. So I think that group is going to be as disruptive, productive, quarterback hurries, TFLs, sacks. They're going to have more of those than they did last year, which will allow a younger, slightly more inexperienced secondary, I think, to grow, take a little pressure off of them. And the inside linebackers, Easton Mascarenas Arnold's due for a gigantic year. Trent has always talked about him being a potential superstar in the system. So a lot's expected of him. I think he'll deliver on that. And a transfer that's played a lot of big-time football, Calvin Hart Jr., both at North Carolina State and Illinois, has had a very good camp. He's been productive at his other two stops. I expect him to have his best year yet.
Speaking of quick fixes, we talked a lot about DJ Ungalele's impressive resume, his characteristics, the reasons he's going to be such a good quarterback, we think, for Oregon State. He has the potential to be Superman. The reality is he doesn't need to, because there's a massive component of Oregon State's offense that we cannot forget about. We'll talk about that when we come back on Talkin Beavers. Talkin Beavers is presented by Par Lumber. Time now for our Drive for Excellence, brought to you by Capital Toyota, your way on the Parkway. We cannot talk about what makes Oregon State's offense something to watch out for without talking about one of the things that has been a crown jewel for a Jonathan Smith offense in the last few years, and that is a stellar running game. Oregon State returning 4 of their starting 5 offensive linemen from last year. Plus, they've got Damian Martinez. He had 6 straight games with 100-plus yards. He had multiple honors, multiple awards after him after this last season. So you guys, when you look at this running game for Oregon State, walk me through why this is going to take some pressure off of DJ Ungalele. Mike, let's start with you.
Well, the room is deep, even with the departure of Jam Griffin in the portal. They have 3 guys, and I say 3 because Isaiah Newell emerged late last year, 2 touchdowns in the rivalry game, and is playing with great confidence because of that, and has had a tremendous camp and has made big strides. So he's ready to be part of a running back room featuring, as you said, the great Damian Martinez. But Deshaun Fenwick also was very productive last year. Deshaun and Damian each rushed for 7 touchdowns. So they're good. And that's a deep room with those 3. Plus, Jonathan, as you well know, Jason, you see how often he uses the wide receivers in the fly sweep game. DJ Uiagalelei, I'm sure, will get some runs at quarterback. So they will miss Jam, but with that great offensive line, when push comes to shove, there's a lot of pushing and shoving from those big guys up front to create a comfort zone in that offense.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like we saw all of last year that this offensive line had the ability to impose their will on any and every one of the Pac-12 teams that they face. So I think they'll be able to continue doing that. And when you have one of the stars in the league and in the nation and Damian Martinez running the ball for you, I think that's a benefit to any head coach. And obviously Jonathan Smith knows how to give him the ball and know how to do it really well. And having, allow those guys, like you said, the depth of the backfield between, Isaiah Newell and also Deshaun Fenwick, I think is just a plus for the Beavs in that department.
Could not have said it better myself. The offense, one to watch in multiple facets of the game. Cannot wait to see them when they take on San Jose State. So let's talk about the Spartans, the Beavers' next opponent, because we already saw them. Plus, we got some hot takes to wrap up Talkin Beavers. Talkin Beavers is presented by Par Lumber. San Jose State, a team that Oregon State has had its eye on, and Jonathan Smith watched every single moment of their opening week game, he said in his office, because this, he says, is a double-edged sword, you guys. San Jose State has already played. Obviously, Oregon State has not. So the two sides of this sword. The first one, Jonathan Smith said, yeah, it's absolutely great. We have tape on them already. So we have an idea of what this team is going to look like. The other side, however, is that they got a chance to get some of the kinks out in their first week, and he expects to see a massive improvement between week 1 and week 2. So which side of the sword do you fall on? The fact that San Jose State has already played a game, good or bad for Oregon State?
I'll go first with this one. I think it's actually a good thing. I think, Oregon State needed the opportunity to see San Jose State and what they bring to the table. And I think with their game against USC, you could see that they actually were kept competitive for a good majority of that game. I mean, in that first quarter, they were sticking with them pretty closely. So I think not that you want your players to come into the game not thinking that it's important, but I think it was good for them to see, like, this is a real opponent that's going to come and bring their A game, and that they need to do the same and come out with a bang and not be lackadaisical with their first game. So I think it was a good thing.
Absolutely. Better to have seen a team that immediately commands their respect. And here's the thing about San Jose State. They play a clean brand of football. They were number 1 last year in the Mountain West in turnover margin against USC at the Coliseum. 3 penalties for 21 yards, no turnovers. This is a clean, well-run program by people we know well. Brent Brennan did a tremendous job as a receivers coach here, coached up Marcus Wheaton and Brandon Cooks at Oregon State, worked with James Rogers as well. Brent's the head coach. He's done a tremendous job in rebuilding a program that was in ruins and survived himself the first couple of seasons of 2-11 and 1-11 to get to a Mountain West championship in 2020 and a bowl game again last year. You've got guys like Joe Sayamalo coaching on the defensive line. Kevin McGivern is the O coordinator. Derek Odom, who's been at Oregon State and a very good coach, the D coordinator. So I think it was important for the Beaver players, as Jason mentioned. The coaches all knew what they were in for, but the players watching that USC game saw a game that was closer than 56-28. It was that magnificent wild touchdown pass that Caleb Williams threw on a broken play and the amazing return by Zachariah Branch. Those are spectacular plays by spectacular individuals. Toe-to-toe for much of that game, Jason, I thought San Jose State hung in and competed at the Coliseum against USC. That'll have all of the Beavers' attention.
As it very well should. So now I want your attention. Our look ahead brought to you by Leatherman, made of metal. 2 sentences or less. What do you think? Give me a season prediction for Oregon State. Mike, I'm going to make you go first.
Well, I've been excited with all of the swirling rhetoric that we can never stay away from, and I always refer to it. But part of that has been, and you touched on it too, AJ, a nation kind of gathering around to see how's that Oregon State program going to do out there. I'm pulling for those guys. Well, I do think there's a lot of emotion and sentiment in the direction of the Beavers. As long as the players remain laser focused, as I talked about, and don't feel as though they're carrying the weight of the nation cheering for them, or even all of Beaver Nation hoping for this special 2000 type or greater season, then I think they have a chance to have that special season. I'm not going to break it down game by game, but let's just say I think they're ready to do even bigger things than they did last year.
Okay, I have to give Mike a hard time here because you did say 2 words or less. Is that what you said, AJ?
2 sentences. I'm going to give you 2
I don't
sentences.
remember.
We got 2 paragraphs. It's fine.
But what I will
Jason,
say,
2 sentences, sir.
2 long sentences.
But what I will say on my side
Some
is that
run-ons.
Pac-12 title contender for Oregon State Beavers.
Okay. Mine?
That's a little more, that had a little more brevity than mine. Good work, Jason.
It's okay, Mike. We love the details. I think mine, back-to-back 10-win seasons for the first time in program history. Jonathan Smith already joined Dennis Erickson and Mike Riley as the only coach to take Oregon State to a 10-win season. I think he makes history this year, back-to-back. That is my hot take. We had some hot takes a little bit from the other guys as well, but either way, next week we got a football game to talk about, and I cannot wait. Thank you so much for joining us on this second episode of Talking Beavers, season number 2. We will see you guys next week after Oregon State and San Jose State. Have a good one.